I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. I would like to submit for the record a letter from the Defense Credit Union Council. 2 decades ago, there were over 8,500 FDIC insured banks in the United States. Today, that number is just 4,000. Many of the banks we have lost are small community banks, which play a vital role in my district in Northeast Indiana. Though there are several reasons for this decline, I believe Dodd-Frank's one-size-fits-all regulatory approach for banks is a key contributor. Mrs. Johnson, can you explain how Dodd-Frank's compliance burdens have contributed to consolidation in the banking sector, and what are the long-term consequences for communities if we continue down this path?
Well, I think it's an incredibly important question. And anytime that, we're talking about regulation, I think it's really important that we start with the outcome. What is the outcome that we want to see? And we've got the most competitive banking system in the world. It's diverse, and so even to Mr. Kelleher's earlier points, you want banks who are out in the capital markets, you want them trading, you want them lending. There's a variety of things that all the banks do and they compete on. You are right, we have seen around a 40% reduction in the number of banks. And I think that consolidation is largely, not only, but largely driven because of the regulatory burden. And the problem with that is that you have less competition for consumers' business, right? The other piece of this is that it pushes lending outside of the banking system. You want banks competing with non-banks. You want banks competing on every single product line. So we just talked about mortgage. This pendulum has swung, and the majority of mortgage lending at different periods of time is now outside of the banking system entirely. You want banks in that business competing for those consumers. Same thing is happening for personal loans, where the majority of loans are actually outside of the banking system. Auto lending, the list goes on. And so I don't think anybody argues against regulation and wanting safety and soundness and consumer protection, but there's always a cost, and we've got to start weighing the costs and if it actually outweighs the benefits.
Thank you. As we've heard today, the result of Dodd-Frank was an entirely new regulatory regime with broad powers, expansive mandates, and little accountability to the American people. Under the Biden administration, we saw this regime in full display. Whether it was Director Chopra weaponizing the CFPB to pursue policies that would have destroyed the overdraft protections many of my constituents rely on, or Vice Chair Barr's efforts to impose the harmful Basel III endgame capital requirements on banks, we have seen how far out of bounds agencies can venture because of Dodd-Frank. Mr. Kupiak, do you think the current Dodd-Frank regulatory regime is accountable to the American people, and is this expansive regulatory regime watering down congressional authority?
I don't exactly know how it could be accountable to the American people. Does it serve the American people well? Parts of it work well. Lots of it is too complicated, and lots of it, I think, could be revised and serve the people better. I'll leave it at that. We're certainly not at a perfect regulatory balance.
What about the relationship with Congress?
I think Congress has delegated too much authority to things like the FSOC to make designations, and I think that those kind of powers belong in the legislature. And you guys should debate it and decide who gets regulated and who doesn't, and the regulators shouldn't decide on their own. They should advise you who you should be talking about, but I would not give them powers if it were my choice.
Thank you. Here in Washington, we have far too many agencies that seem to be more interested in expanding their own power than actually serving the public. Americans across the country, and certainly in my district, are fed up with this, as we just discussed a little bit. A prime example of this is the Office of Financial Research, which was created by Dodd-Frank to aid in data collection. The problem is that prior to Dodd-Frank, federal regulators already had an extensive ability to collect data. The Federal Reserve Board alone employs over 400 PhD economists. In addition, each of its regional banks can conduct its own localized research, not to mention the extensive data collected by our other financial regulators. Mr. Benson, can you elaborate on how OFR has failed to add significant value beyond what existing agencies already provide, and how do you think this reflects the broader problem of regulatory sprawl under Dodd-Frank?
Thank you, Congressman. So OFR does collect a lot of data. You're right, other agencies collect data. So and Congress has talked about this before, of looking to see, can there be some coordination or streamlining of financial data collection? And in addition, protection of that data, I would add as well, because we know the government is susceptible to cyber risk just as the industry is. But on top of that, I mean, OFR does, on the one hand, does play an important role. They collect data for the SOFR reference rate. That's very important. On the other hand, they have had situations of mission creep. So I do think it's appropriate for Congress to take a look at that.
All right, thank you. My time has expired. I would like to thank all of the witnesses for their testimony today. Without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days to submit additional written questions for the witnesses to the chair. The questions will be forwarded to the witnesses for their response. Witnesses, please respond no later than August the 20th of 2025. This hearing is adjourned.